welcome to our show. This is the Weekly Jargon. I am Jose Rodriguez.
And Rohi Zachariah.
And today, Rohi, we have a special episode here that we'll bring up. It is on EVs. But before we dive into our episode today, we just want to say welcome. For those of you that are tuning in to this live podcast, we welcome you. We continue to ask that you like, subscribe, and share our content. We try to bring in good podcasts every week. But Rohi, with that, let's go ahead and provide some updates on our city. Both Rohi and I sit on the city council, and we'd like to bring some of the good news that we're doing around the city. So Rohi, what are some of the good news that we're doing here around the city?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of construction going on right now. Downtown is definitely moving forward with their road diet here soon, as looks like the water pipe is almost completed as far as getting put in. And then I know on my side of town, we got a lot of construction with the school going in, and looks like about maybe a year out for the traffic light right at my house at Cleveland and Granada there. So that'll be exciting.
Much needed. And I think that's a busy intersection. And
Yes.
I think if anyone can comment on that, I think even during the late hours of of night, you probably hear quite a bit of traffic and quite a few commotion there, right? I think in our past conversations, you've noted that you've heard a lot of speeders. Maybe people like to pill out and
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, right? But either way, these are some of the improvements that are taking place. One of the bigger things that we want to invite you to is our grand opening celebration. We'll have a ribbon cutting for our Lions Town and Country Park. Will we be showcasing the trail, the walking trail?
Yeah.
So this is a long awaited ceremony, but I can assure you that a lot of the residents will appreciate the fact that we have a very decent walking trail now at town and at the Town and Country Park. So this is going to take place on March 21st, which is Saturday. So come on out, enjoy, take a walk, maybe a mile walk around the park, and enjoy the improvements that we've done here at the City of Madera. Yeah. With that, we're going to dive into our show today, Rohi, and that is electrifying the future. Now, when we talk about electrifying the future, I saw you pull up with the Tesla today. So tell me why. I know we talked about the gas tax, and when we talked about how expensive, especially here in California, how the gas tax is, and how important it is to have a gas tax, by the way, because that's how a lot of our highway projects are funded. But nevertheless, people that don't want to pay that gas tax, especially now, they're moving into this EV section here, sector. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what made you want to get into that. Was it our show last week?
The show, all the memes now, people riding their bikes to work. I think it's there's enough going on to encourage people. But we obviously last week's show, it didn't help, I guess, in that sense, to bring light to the idea that gas and our current gas prices are going to be I think a little bit of a long-lasting issue going forward. They want to blame it on the war. We won't get into that, but just speaking with one of my customers who's into diesel, and we were opening with is the price of diesel already affecting him? And he was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even buy a truck. I was about to buy a new diesel." He said, "Forget it." He put that on hold. So compounding all that, we've been entertaining the idea about this Tesla. Obviously, yes, prior to this, I've been driving the Prius, which I think is amazing when you look at the gas mileage you can get out of a car. Looking at 50 miles to the gallon, where my Jeep gets 13. To get me to the same A to B, it can make a big difference, week to week. But I think the Tesla was just one of those. It's the nail in the coffin of understanding, like, this is where we're going, and we'll give it a try.
Yeah, and let's not leave out the fact that it can drive on its own, right?
Oh my gosh,
and I think that's some of the features that people really strive for, especially in today's traffic congestion. Right? A lot of people that have to commute, and it's not just a coastal deal anymore, right?
Yeah.
We talk about this quite often, how EVs were a big thing around certain areas like Central Coast, maybe up north and south. But now here in the valley, every other car, at least as I'm going down the freeway, either it's a Tesla or some type of EV. Correct. Now, I don't have all the models, I think the most popular one that we all know is a Tesla
Yeah.
because we know Teslas are all electric, right? Ford has its own electric department. GMC probably has their own. Toyota, I'm not sure if Toyota has them, but any other the car manufacturer that's adopting the EV craze is taking on their own models and
Yeah.
their own lines, right? So as the landscape is changing here in our Central Valley, and I think more importantly for us here, where we're stuck in a fishbowl the geography, is that a lot of that air, I mean, is trapped here, and we have some of the worst air quality around the nation, and it's not because we have more vehicles and what have you. It's just because of how our geography is.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by mountains. A lot of that air is trapped here, and it's not good for our health. So I think adopting this here is a great thing. It's just now, does it become affordable for everyday family?
Yeah.
And that hasn't hit mainstream yet because EVs, like any other new technology, Rohi, as you know, become very expensive up front. But as you start mass producing them, they become a little bit more affordable, and people can start adopting that EV craze. Now,
Yeah, I think it's the adoption part is what is key to the growth, because again, like you said, I remember when these started coming out, it was, I hate to say, stigmatized by the hippie. You were obviously of maybe a certain political liberal,
yeah, of course, I mean,
save the world. And I remember seeing again some of the memes and stuff of like people having bumper stickers lately, and it's gun guys, and he says basically, I forgot the exact wording, but it's like, don't make fun of me. I'm saving money to buy more guns, and it's a punch. It's again acknowledging that this is now becoming socially acceptable to everyone. Like, it's not, oh, you're just a tree hugger because you want to, drive an electric car or drive a more efficient car. So I think that adoption is helping. I know with some of, what happened with Trump and Elon didn't help with, him losing one side, but maybe gaining another. But I think in all, especially from where we live right now, the adoption is, I would say, I hate to say it's not going to stop. I know some manufacturers are saying that they're struggling with some adoption in sales of them, but I think overall you're going to see that affordability and pricing come to a point, because now cars in general, like we're past the gouging point. Now we're back to, we got to sell cars. And you're seeing, like with this one, like we were talking about, like the interest rates, 0.99%, financing. It's like they want to get people back to buying.
A lot of it, I mean, and here we don't talk about this often, but a lot of it is the incentive to try to reshape behavior, reshape the way we adopt these behaviors, right? Especially when it comes to EVs. Now, do we think that EVs are the best thing since sliced bread? I mean, one can argue that, right?
Sure.
Because truthfully, the one thing that's reliable at all times is if you have a fossil fuel or combustible engine that burns some type of fuel that you have, well, you can depend on that. But when the grid is down, or you have no way of producing that electricity to charge that, then that's an issue there.
Yeah.
And, the funny memes that I seen about Teslas, and this isn't about Tesla, but it was funny because you had a guy on the road that had broken down with the gas generator in the back of his trunk. And I thought that was funny because that was just showing that, hey, these may be some of the issues that we're facing in the initial stages of this adaptation.
The growing pains.
Right, growing pains. But essentially, I think, look, I know here in the state, California has mandated that zero emission vehicles by 2035, right? And what does that mean? Well, that means that there's a mandate for car manufacturers to start pushing, and then there's an incentive for folks, rebates and what have you, whether you get those through the federal. And I think in some cases, they still have, the state may have those rebates, and then
Just
again,
expired.
your local district, Valley Air Pollution Control, they have some type of rebate for you to do that as well, whether it's a hybrid plug-in or a full EV. You're getting these rebates and or incentives to continue to push this, to adapt to the latest deal, right? Again, now it just becomes affordability, right? I mean, you may not be paying at the pump, but you're certainly paying for it somewhere, because you're going to have to charge that somewhere, whether it's at your home or at the at some charging station.
Yeah.
The one thing that I am seeing, Rohi, and it's starting to become is the infrastructure surrounding the grid, right? There's news of a big project that's taking place out near the going out to the Central Coast, where you'll have a huge solar farm. that again will provide the electricity to manage some of the demand for energy, especially with EVs.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be big. That's going to be big. So there's a couple of things that are taking place that are shaping why EVs are going to be pushed more so. And I just mentioned a couple
Yeah.
with not just the legislative mandate, but you have the infrastructure coming its way, and then you got incentives and rebates. Anything
Yeah.
else you can add to
I
that?
mean,
Ronnie?
the only thing is that I would, so the state rebates just ended. That's one of the things that we were maybe a little hesitant on is, you know, I hate to see when, if the push is really, again, to get people clean air and driving these things, there shouldn't, it should be re-upped already, not dissolved. You know, same thing with like the solar, you know, now, you know, we dissolve solar because we want you to push into battery storage. You know, well, if again, going to clean energy is so important, why are we dissolving some of these programs? We should continue them to keep the build out. But obviously there's plans in place, you know, and you hate to say like that the state mandates of like, you know, the gas tax and the tax being raised to make gas more expensive, to force people into the EVs, you know, like, I don't know because I'm not part of that grand plan, but it can appear that way to the average person that, oh, you know, they're just forcing me out of my vehicle. Obviously with the mandate saying 2035, no more, you know, gas cars to be sold, obviously, yeah, you're squeezing me instead of making it an incentive to go there, right? Like maybe by 2035, I could care less about a gas guzzler because I'm just going to have an electric car. That's going to be the norm. But like you said, it's the cart before the horse. The infrastructure isn't there. Some of the technology isn't there. And I think that's going to be what's key, you know, is, I mean, if you wanted to kill the gas car, all you'd have to do is, you know, I hate to say something similar to what's going on right now is, you know, subsidize Tesla or Ford, whoever, make their EV car sold for $20,000. Cap it. Make them, hey, you can't sell it for more than $20,000. You know how many people buy it? There would be no more gas cars because they're so expensive.
Are you giving them the idea that they did
hope
with
so.
cell phones? Because they did exactly the same
Yeah.
thing with cell phones, right?
Yeah.
If everybody wanted to
Trade
get a
in your
cell
gas
phone-
car
Yeah.
and get an incentive for the new one.
And there
you
are
know?
incentives for that. By the way, the Valley Air alongside Valley Can
Mm-hmm.
do provide certain rebates and provide a certain amount of money for your old vehicle. Again, the smogs that are done throughout the valley, I think they provide a good way of saying, hey, if my vehicle is no longer passing smog and I'm gonna have difficulty getting my
Yeah.
DMV registration, then maybe you can trade this in. Here's a boost, go get yourself. But I do like the idea, Rohi, what you're proposing could be borderline, well, that again is government leaning into you know, meddling in
Sure.
business, right? And,
Sure.
and frankly, I think that's where you get a lot of the these parties that have a big divide is what's limited government and what's not. Should we have a central government deciding how to go about it? But I think that if you wanted to get to an initiative, the best way to do it is through rebates and not mandates, right? And
Yeah.
incentivize people to say, hey, if you go this route, this is the way to do it. Now, along the lines of what you said earlier, the cart before the horse. Well, let's talk about that, right? Before there was horses as a means of traveling, right? And carriages and carts, right? So if you go back and look at when that transition happened, and even in some rural areas of the world, you still have horses that are highly dependent when it comes to traveling, right? But I think after the gasoline engine, or at least the combustible engine came about, then that was very revolutionary. And to this day, we still have it. I mean, yes, we may be producing emissions that are harmful, but nevertheless, that's what kind of industrialized this revolution that we had with manufacturing and what have you. A lot of it was steam engines before, but after the diesel engine came about, that really put us ahead by a mile, right? And now here we are at a crux where we have to decide, do we want to continue moving forward this way, or we have this other way that we can adopt, which I think is it healthier? Is it better? I mean, you're already producing the amount of electricity you need. It's just a matter of how do you store it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the problem that we have. It's how do we store this energy that we have out there? And I don't think we see these big plants that are storage plants. So what they want is every residence to have their own battery so that they have their own storage capacity. And again, I don't know. I mean, is the infrastructure there for us to move on at least 50% EV. Can we
Yeah.
handle the 50% EV here in California?
Well, and again, it's still going to go back to the end of the day. It's at the average consumer is what is cheaper, and I know that was for a long time where, depending on the study and the numbers coming out, some of the studies for a while were saying EVs are not cheaper. EVs are more expensive than your gas car. So, you look at those kind of things, and I don't know who put them out. Maybe it's the gas companies putting these studies out, but it definitely. The consumer is going to go with what makes sense for their pocket. Yeah, some of them are people are going to buy because it's the cool thing or it's the new thing or I want to save the world. But at the end of the day, if driving that Tesla from A to B on a weekly basis is cheaper to do than driving my other car, my gas guzzler, then that's what most people are going to lean to because now, it's about money.
Money, of course.
People do make decisions, unfortunately, that are adverse to that, but for the most part, that's what we guide ourselves with.
I will remind folks that you used to drive your Hummer within a mile period, right?
I'll still drive the Hummer. I mean, it's I think it gets a mile to the gallon.
There you go. And that's a choice.
But see, that can run on anything. That's
right.
I'm saving the world by doing that. But no, but you said the fallacy is. People not realizing when you're charging that Tesla at 2 a.m., there is zero battery. It's a coal plant or a gas plant or a nuclear plant somewhere off in the world, somewhere in California that's providing electricity. You're not really saving the fossil fuel, BS.
Yes.
Maybe in the future when we do have that battery storage, which again, the cart before the horse. Why aren't we incentivizing more? Why don't we have these, gigawatt, facilities where I don't know. Doesn't make sense. California's pushed for electricity, but we don't seem to have enough of it, or storage at least.
And the way, obviously we have an abundance of electricity that's being produced. It's just a matter of how do we store it. No different than, when you have the discussion around water, right?
Yeah.
There's a snowpack that melts, comes down the river, and there's just not enough storage to contain it.
But build a lake and dam something up, and
but if you
the
dam
world
it
comes
up,
to an end.
then you cut that stream, and it affects wildlife. And again, that's the big divide that we have today, right? So I don't think we're going to get into that today, Rohi. But just here are some of the where the policy meets real life, especially here in the Central Valley, where long distance commuters like from Fresno to Madera, Merced to Modesto, or Tulare to Kern, the rural geography. There's all these charging deserts, right? Limited public infrastructure, income constraints. Obviously EVs. There's an affordability gap. Agriculture and logistics, right? Not all the fleets, tractors, and equipment used for ag is there yet. They're trying to transition to that, but I think once you look at once you pencil it out, it just doesn't make sense. The diesel engine is still something that's very productive in the ag industry because it just does a lot more, and it doesn't pencil out yet to try to get these heavy batteries that would have to do the efficiency of what a diesel engine does. Yes, we're concerned about emissions and what have you, but again, with incentives that we here at the Valley, especially Valley Air provide, is to try to replace your older tractors with more fuel efficient tractors. Again, reducing that amount of particulate matter. Now, some may think that that's counterintuitive, but again, it's reducing. At the end of the day is how much emissions can we reduce with the amount of money we invest, right? So that's a question that's always back and forth. But more importantly is the equity concerns, Rohi. I think nobody likes to hear that word, but we have to ensure that the incentives are also reaching those disadvantaged communities. And Madera, you can say that could be a disadvantaged community, but we're not the only community alongside the Central Valley. So how do we provide, like you said, should we then incentivize in giving out these EVs? And I'm not saying giving out, but making it very affordable so that people can transition. Because a lot of the people that are the long commuters are going to use less efficient, cheaper cars. They're cheaper, meaning they don't cost as much, but they're gas guzzlers as well. Yeah.
I mean, we do it already. I mean, that's why we have the free phones on every corner. We have all these things that, internet, reduced pricing electricity. We have programs in place on everything like that already. But like you said, it's okay. Should it be for the car? Should I pay because I can afford it the 35,000 that the Tesla's going for. But Jose, who can't afford it, should he get it for 20? Is there stipulations like he can't sell it? Obviously, so those programs don't get abused. I think at the end of the day, yeah. I mean, if the goal at the end of the day is truly about less gas cars on the freeway or on the roads, then that's how you do it. You know what I mean? Now, I can say that for some people, and I will struggle with that a little bit, the fact that once you buy some of these cars that you can't work on it. You can't take it to your buddy's house down the road and change the alternator or change the oil, or you can't do these things yourself anymore. You're now kind of into that ecosystem. I think some people may have hesitation because, again, a lot of people don't buy cars for a couple years and then flip them. They're going to buy a car and hold on to it until the wheels fall off, So that mentality, I don't think is there yet. I don't think it makes sense or pencils out right now to say we're going to have this Tesla for the next 10 years. You know what I mean? It's not realistic. So I think that may be a challenge for some people that were, again, the finances part kicks in. Is again, it's either you incentivize them or realize they're going to be on the sidelines for a while now, until maybe the used ones they're already kind of doing are kicking down into the market, and it becomes more affordable.
And again, you have to ask those questions: are they going to be reliable as when you first got those?
They're new.
Right?
They're too new to know. So
you look at an iPhone, for example, and as we've noted before with iPhones, it's like you're upgrading every 2 years, and battery life. After recharge, obviously it starts winding down. Same thing with solar. But some of the challenges and trade-offs that we can see here, especially in the Valley, Rohi, are the upfront costs, right? Those are the barriers from someone just saying, you know what, I'm going to go buy me a Tesla, right? Maybe a cheaper. I still believe, and this is me, okay? You're going to hear it from me here at the Weekly Jargon, that there is going to be an outlier, some company that's going to come and dominate that industry, even though Tesla may be the pioneers of it, and all these other cars, but there's an outlier out there that's going to make that phone or that car that's going to reshape the way we drive in the future. Whether it's the Zion or it's the Kia, what have you, there's an outlier out there. And I'll tell you this because it's happened so many times. It's happened in technology with computers. If you recall, back then IBM was the only really big computer in the industry, up until you had Compaq, up until you had Gateway. And if you recall, during the 1990s, these people blasted and they exploded. Circuit City was full of all these things, and they made it very affordable. Back then, you couldn't really buy a computer for more than $4,000 to $5,000. Well, really, no family could afford it unless you had you were an affluent family. But I remember buying my first computer. I went to Costco and I bought it for $800, I think, at that time, and it came with the whole thing. The server, which was a tower, the monitor, speakers, and it gave me Windows. It gave me all these things, and I thought, wow, now I can afford this. And again, this was in 1998, I think, Roy. And the reason why I bought it is because at that time my wife and I were dating, and I wanted to get into that you got mail deal, right? And that back then that was the chat, and it wasn't just for that. I mean, I had just come out of college, and I gotten my first email. My first email was at Sac State, and it was funny. I didn't know how to use it properly, but I knew that I can write text, and then I can send it to my roommate. My roommate then would get it a day later. He would look at, laugh and write back. I mean, again, this is the initial stages of how this texting world is working today. But the one thing that I want to say is that, yes, you're going to see the high cost, but essentially, like anything else in business, with the demand that we have, you'll have an outlier come in and explode and make it very, very affordable. I don't think it's the government's job to do it, but the government could subsidize, like you said, and or incentivize. I hate to use those words, but it typically happens. It happened with the phones. It happens with all these things. It happens with electricity. They provide a care program. They provide all these things. And people jump onto these things a lot quicker if you want to reshape behavior, right? So some of these things is like even the range anxieties, like on rural areas. Will I make it?
Yep.
If I live across town and I have to commute to Fresno and then make it on the way back, do I need to charge it while I'm out there? So those things are still challenges that people are figuring out. And as we continue to expand on those range deals with electricity, I think people are still going to be on the fence about it. More importantly, are the impacts on the gas tax, and we talked about this before, Rohi. I mean, if everybody jumps into the EV today, where does that leave us as far as revenue with funding programs that we need, not only for our state highways, but even our roads here locally? So those are some of the concerns,
Yeah.
Rohi. Not sure if you want to take on that as well.
I mean, and to go back to your email, talk. So
Were you born then?
Oh yeah. The scarier part is, and email is a perfect example of where we're going. Is when email came about and was gaining popularity, it was there was a time period where they wanted to tax email. They wanted 5 cents for every email being sent because they were fearful that the post office was going to collapse. Nobody's going to send a letter of mail anymore. We're going to just, the whole ecosystem's coming to a halt. But imagine if that had passed. Imagine for every email, you had to pay 5 cents, right? I mean, yeah, sure, tons of money would have been collected, but it would have stunted that entire growth of we have I got 6 email accounts right now, and I get an email probably every 5 minutes, right? Like, how much would that have stunted technology and communication if that's how we would have gone? When I log into my account today, I had to get an email to verify a code and all this. Like, sometimes being fearful, like you're saying with the gas tax and where are we going to get the money and we need to raise these taxes, can have adverse effects if they don't see at the end of the day, where is that going to go? Where is that going to lead us? And maybe getting more creative of some other means to collect the money instead of just, again, tax people. Because like you said, if the affluents are adopting EV faster, then that tax is only going to be collected on those less impoverished anyways. So you're going back to taxing the poor and incentivizing those who can afford it to get these, incentives. My concern, like when you talk about long distance and these things, it's definitely when we start converging technologies, when you start saying, hey, in 8 years, 9 years from now, we're hoping everybody's electric. Okay, well, what happens when there's a power outage? Oh, I guess the world comes to a halt. Well, that's not where we want to be. That's why we have alternatives. That's why we have some of these things so that we can have a backup, right? Like if you ban gas generators and all of a sudden it's like, well, we need electricity. Well, sucks to be you. Everything's electric now. It's not the best. Now again, 9 years from now, we could have, like you said, leaps in battery technology where capacities maybe double, or maybe things just get more efficient and we can get much longer ranges or lighter vehicles. Maybe it's a combination of maybe we don't have these extra heavy vehicles because the batteries themselves are getting lighter. I hate to say America does things wrong, but in other countries, they don't do large batteries. You know what they do? The battery swap. You go to a battery station and an automated system swaps you out a battery and sticks you a new one in. So you don't have to have these giant batteries that get me from A to B 300 miles and I got to charge it up for, so many hours. You pull into a gas station and a robot just switches your batteries out and now you got a full charge. And that's where, like, when you look at, like, you're saying, like, the farming and its ability to be adopted, well, that's the problem. I ride my tractor, maybe I have to have these giant batteries that gets me 3 hours of usage, and then it's got to go sit for the rest of the day charging up before I can use it again, instead of having what other countries have looked at as this battery swap idea. We'll just, okay, make the car so there's an easier swap, a system in place to where we can just keep things going. Because again, if I got to go from here to New York by Tesla right now, and even if I have a backup driver where in a traditional gas car, just hit a gas station, fill up, 20 minutes, go pee, I can be across the country much, much faster than that Tesla that I can get so far and then I got to stop. I got to get so far and I got to stop and keep charging, even though we could theoretically run that car 24 hours a day. The battery system isn't in place instead of having that swap. So there's hurdles in place.
No, I agree. I think you said it in the past, and I think it's a point well made. Is a lot of times we make policies not thinking of the future, and sometimes if you want to incentivize everyone to get into the EV, then you're pretty much shooting yourself in the foot.
Correct.
Because essentially that revenue that you were dependent on to continue to fix your roads and or highways, how are you going to replace that right now? Because the initiative was, let's make it zero emission. Let's make it easier for the air, which is great. I mean, I think for human life and everyday life, I think that's good. Who doesn't want to breathe in clean air, right?
Yeah.
I think that initiative is great, but the problem would be then how do you address the fact that you're still driving on these roads? You still need to repair them. You still need to maintain them. And where are you going to collect this money? And this is the challenges that we have today. And I think we talked about this last week, and this has been a hot topic regarding the gas tax, because now you have local politicians really stepping up and saying, let's suspend the gas tax, not really having a plan of how you're going to replace that if in fact you suspend it. Yeah, you're going to give the average Californian, maybe a bit of money back by not paying this gas tax, but then how are you going to maintain the roads? Is there a plan underway? And I think that's important for people to know, is how are you going to fund this? So I think it's a challenge, but again, us as Californians, I think we're very not only resilient, but we're very innovative, and I'm sure we'll find a way, because we are leading the nation in some capacity when it comes to EVs. We are driving that, and states will model. They never want to take that leap of faith and say, let's be the first state to do this, right? And a lot of the times, when they don't do that, then they're behind, and a lot of times that's why they're. Now, again, this could be debated back and forth, Rohi. I'm not saying that other states have it better in other arenas, which they do. But for the most part, I think what we're trying to do here is the initiatives of just having more efficient vehicles, cleaner air, and trying to find a solution of how to continue to maintain our roads.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're going to have people on both aisles tell you how, I'll tell you how, and I'll tell you this, and I'll tell you that. But again, present a solution, get involved, and we'll get something going, because Californians are very resilient and at the same time, great innovators. Now, anything else that we want to add to this here, Rohi? We're running into 32 minutes, and I know there's a lot to talk about, but if you are viewing us for the first time, if you have comments you want to make, please do let us know what you think of the future of electrifying our vehicles, so that we can make this a better place. And any last remarks you want to make there, Rohi?
Yeah, again, I would say there are definitely more creative ways to get people to jump on board if that's the end goal. Tax breaks on my electric bill, or giving me power for cheaper because it's charging my car. But I think, again, going back to some of the stuff we talked about in last week's episode, is if at the end of the day we think that we're going to tax ourselves to getting better roads, we're not. It's very clear that it's not going to happen. Even if we raise the gas tax another 10 cents, it doesn't get us any closer. It just hurts. There's going to have to be bigger changes that are going to have to come about. And again, my only concern with a lot of what's happening is, like you said, we said earlier, we cut the solar incentives because there's too much power, but my power bill has not gone down. It's supposed to be going down now a little bit, but if it's truly what they say, then my bill right now, because the sun is out, it should cost no dollars. You should be incentivizing these electric cars to be plugging in every outlet to suck up all this electricity that essentially they can't do anything with right now, but we're not. And those are the kind of programs where I say there's a bigger problem in place, right? That, every Tesla right now, from now till about 2 o'clock, should be plugged in, charging up, generating this, sucking up all this electricity that we can't really use, that we're having to pay other states to take. That's what would get us on the right foot, but we're not doing that. It's still going to cost me an arm and a leg right now to go charge that Tesla right now, if I do it right now.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things when you say policy, whether it's got to be government, whether it's got to be the companies themselves figuring out how to help us, the normal people. Until those things happen, I think you're going to see that slow adoption. And when that point breaks, I think you'll see, like you said, an explosion of adoption, because it's going to make sense financially in my pocket. So.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I look at with even with EVs. Let's just assume, Rohi, that EVs do become the norm in the next 10 years, right? but they're still driving on roads. You're still having to park somewhere to charge it.
Sure.
Right? So all that infrastructure still requires maintenance, right? And I think this is a key thing that we miss sometimes is that if you look at the amount of gray concrete that we've established in California, again, that is for one purpose only, and that's for the auto, right? We've made our cities, our state, car dependent so much that everything we build, even when you build these shopping centers, you have to consider, well, I'm going to build a shopping center that's yay big,
Sure.
but I got to build twice as much space for the
parking.
vehicles that are going to come in, right?
Yeah.
So think about that. And a lot of that area, a lot of that space requires infrastructure. People forget about to factor that in when you're building something or you're going to maintain something, right? And I talk about this especially with cities and planning smarter cities, right? Is that every time you start getting away from the center of what the city is, then essentially you're requiring additional linear foot of maintenance at some point, whether it's water, sewer, roads,
Everything,
sidewalks, everything has an added cost. And sometimes, like you said, I don't think the amount of tax that we collect today, or even doubling that tax, would be sufficient to manage that. I mean, one can say, well, I got a better efficient way of doing it. But truly, I think it's just reducing the amount of infrastructure by creating more improved ways of transportation, right? And we talk about the high-speed rail. Well, I mean, maybe that's not going to be everyday rider, right? Not everyday rider. But what other types of transits are we using? What other types of, we went through a micro transit study not too long ago. We're talking about, hey, these buses are starting to, go on their own. There isn't any ridership in there. So maybe certain routes should be eliminated, and maybe we should bring in more like the Uber style, right? Something that's more efficient, and we're not having to waste a lot of money in these buses that are just going through the city with maybe one or no riders, right?
But my fear, and I think it's happening already, and I would hate to see it grow, is people are always going to find the loophole to not paying that money. That's what electric cars were about. It was, I'm not buying gas, I'm not paying the taxes, I'm not doing all these things, right? So what's the next loophole after you start doing the mileage tax? You get these electric bikes that don't have mileage, right? These kids are going to drive those bikes. We joked about it. We talked about it last week. Like, are we going to ride the bike? Look, are we going to get these electric bikes?
You were talking about getting a bike, and you went out and got a Tesla.
I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer. But like I'm saying, if you get to the next point, you're going to squeeze people to the next point. That's just going to say, what's the next system that I avoid all of this altogether? It's these little electric bikes you got floating around town. Now I'm not paying any DMV tax. I'm not paying any road tax. I'm not paying anything. Charging at my house. I drive to my work or school, and I drive back home, and using the same roads. Let somebody else pay for it, right? And it's already happening. You're seeing a lot more adoption of that technology. It's, again, when it kicks down to the average person, and you start seeing that, what's California's plan then? What are they going to do? And you kind of see some of it. What do they already start doing? They ban them, right? You use public safety. You say, these things are dangerous. We can't have them on the roads. That's not the thing. They don't want full adoption of an electric motorcycle that doesn't require a license, DMV registration, or taxing to become the norm. Because then now you're screwed. Now you have no way to collect any money, and good luck fixing that road that we're all using.
Yeah, and again, for that then, Rohi, then you start really allocating more funds towards the infrastructure for those bikes, which I don't think we have completely here. There's other cities that are very bike friendly. Obviously, with rural communities like ours, we're adopting that slowly. We are bringing in the bike lanes and stuff that are happening, especially through major corridors. But to your point, I think it is important for people to see that if it comes down to where you're going to save the most money, and you're just down the street, it makes a lot of sense, really. And I think people are starting to adopt that more so in urban cities. But I think essentially it kind of leaks over to our rural communities pretty soon.
I'll tell you what I started seeing last week, and I hate to see that become adopted, but the electric golf cart is legal to drive on our roads as long as you get it registered. So again, go back to that. I can go buy a golf cart for a couple $1,000, charge it up, drive from home A to B, perfectly legal drive on these roads, and no tax. Nobody's gonna collect a single dime of tax on me. That's the scary part. Like I said, that's when people, again, going to their pocketbook, are going to start coming up with creative ways to avoid any taxes you impose on them.
Yeah, no, and I think Rohi, in this society today, that's the name of the game, is try to find out how you can live off grid, how
Correct.
you can do this, right?
Exactly.
Everybody's trying
Exactly.
to find an angle and
Yeah.
a loophole, but
Anyways.
for the
Yeah.
majority of people, I think having some type of structure certainly helps. And
Sure.
if you're one of those people that does have that innovative way of creating that loophole that's legal, then hey, all means share it with us. Come on down to our show and give us some of your expertise and help us become less grid dependent. With that, Rohi, I think we're going to wrap this up. We're moving on to 40 minutes. If
Yeah.
you like today's episode, we ask that you continue to like, subscribe, and share. Let us know what kind of topics you want to talk about. We'd be more than happy to discuss those and have you on. So with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next